Excluding people who are different comes easily to all of us. Consider my profile. I've come from many kinds of universities, from the foreign service life, from international schools, from one of the leading schools in India, boarding schools called Vellum, from a college that's looked at as number one, Lady Shri Ram College, then with the Taj Group of Hotels, finally the number one business school of India, IIM Ahmedabad, followed by the University of Hindustan Unilever, and today Lemon Tree Hotels, which we have created. Some people may consider this to be a kind of an exclusive club. I don't. I think these are experiences, and this is what has made my journey and brought me here today. So, how did this really happen? First, let me tell you that all of us want to be counted in. And over our lives, at different stages, people find ways to count us out. Let's look at our youth, our childhood, school, where we consider ourselves to be maybe better and bigger than anyone else, or maybe it's girls versus boys, or maybe it's a different economic class versus another economic class. And if somebody is differently wired or differently abled, we are going to say, stay out. Then look at ourselves later in college. In fact, I had a gang of people who I used to hang out with because we were very similar. Similar in our tastes. We were on stage, we liked theater, we liked music. And then there were those who might have come from a very different background, maybe a Hindi medium school, and who had a very different exposure. And we would consider them maybe to be different. And again, boys versus girls, of course, always happens. Here too, we were telling those who were differently abled that you are really not one of us. We don't know who you are. Then let's look at our early work life. Even there, we do all kinds of divides. For instance, sales versus operations. That happened to me. Then as you grow in your career and you grow your family, you find other ways to group together, to align with people who are like you, to align with communities who are like you. And at that time, maybe you are still excluding another community. Possibly, I think I'm Punjabi, I'm from North India, and so the rest of the world is different. It's not like that, maybe I'm different. So the idea is that there comes a stage in our lives where we reflect upon this again, and we start welcoming diversity because we know it enriches us. We can see that, we can understand that. That's the time I'm ready to be a student again. Maybe you are too. This is a stage in Singapore. It was a conference for HR leaders. It was about inclusion at the workplace. It was a few years ago, before the pandemic. I was on that stage. I looked pretty confident. But for a moment, I felt the enormity and the power of that situation. I felt some fear. There was pride, definitely. But that fear was coming into my breath. And I had to talk to myself and say, hold on, Al, you've got this. And then it continued. How did I reach this stage? That's what I'd like to share with you today. In fact, there was a time at our organization where there was a growth point, an inflection point in our growth, where our chairman challenged me and said, you've been handling sales and marketing, now you handle sustainability and ESG. I had no background in it at all. So he said, doesn't matter, learn. So I spent 1 year, again, going back to university, literally, but at my workplace. I would go and visit people who were in the disability sector, understand how they are training, what they do, what does it take for a person who's specially abled to be integrated into the mainstream. I also learned about energy, renewable energy, water management, waste management, all from the experts. And that is how I was able to move that forward. I found myself becoming very, very passionate about the inclusion work that we were doing. In fact, we grew our numbers from 100 to 200 within 10 months. And that number had been at 100 for almost 2 years. We also found that the productivity of these special people was going up and improving. And we analyzed. And the reason was we were training them in a manner that they could understand and receive the information we were giving them. So if they were deaf people, we were training them in Indian Sign Language. If it was someone with an intellectual disability, we were training them through demonstrations and role plays rather than classroom teaching. So we realized that this was working. And we kept trying new disabilities and it all worked. That's how we were able to actually take it forward. Some lessons I learned in this journey. Firstly, really, nothing is impossible. Every step I mention right now of a new disability coming in, from deaf to physical handicap to acid survivor to low vision to intellectual and developmental disability to autism, the complexity was increasing. And the need for us to train better, to set up the processes better, was very high. And that is what I was doing at that time. And even though I initially thought this is going to be impossible, actually, nothing was. The second lesson was the devil is in the details. Now, we may say this is very simplistic. It is. Life is simple. We must plan, plan, and plan. Whether it is the training, whether it is the content, whether it is who is going to support us from outside, the NGO partners, whether it is setting targets, whether it is monitoring, everything has to be planned very well. And that's what we did, especially with the intellectual disability and autism, which is a little more complex. This is very important. The third lesson was we have to move from can't do, so a person with disability can't do, to can do, and possibly can do later. I'll give you an example. If a person is going to work in the coffee shop and he or she has Down syndrome, that means there's an intellectual challenge. Can we easily teach that person to welcome a guest, seat them at the table, and serve water? Yes. But can we easily teach them to go to the floors, find the correct room, and serve the room service order in the correct room? Can that be done? It's difficult. It's complex. So that became part of can do later. Similarly, for a person who's got an intellectual challenge to learn a new language, we didn't expect that we would be able to do it. But we taught our Down syndrome team, our autistic team, Indian Sign Language. It took time, we had to be patient, and it was incredible that they could actually do it. So we moved from can't do to can do and can do later. The fourth one is my most precious learning, which is faith over fear. You remember the Singapore stage? It was just a fraction of a moment. And in fact, every time we move forward in our inclusion work, there were so many reasons to fail. We were trying to build a culture. Easy to fail. The employees are coming, employees are going, a lot of attrition is going on in the hospitality sector. Easy to fail. We were fearful, but then we said, let's believe, let's hold the faith. And that is what has brought us to today, actually. Picture this. A former Deputy First Minister of Scotland meeting with and talking to Rita, who is deaf, with the help of a sign language interpreter. This was a moment where I was witnessing it, and I felt like the world had actually come together, and in fact, that's what we need to do. The world truly must come together as one. If we look at what's happening in our community, in our country, other countries as well, over the last decade, there has been stress and there has been a struggle for health, healthcare, employment, safety, all kinds of issues. And we are the ones who can fix this, you and I. We can actually build a better world. I want to share another story. A lady walks into our chairman's office a few years ago, dressed beautifully in a sari, elegantly, wearing some pearls, and carrying a bouquet of flowers. As she enters his room and he says hello to her, she bursts out crying. My poor chairman was very surprised and wanted to know what had happened. When she revealed her story, she said, I've come to thank you. Thank you because you employed my son who's deaf and who's worked with you steadily for 1 year. Before that, my own family wouldn't consider him to be anybody. Now my community and society considers him to be a valuable person, and they are willing to marry their daughter to my son. I want to tell you, the daughter was a hearing person. It's just incredible that not only did we impact one person, we impacted that person's family. It was really something. Another aspect is when an organization includes people who are usually excluded, they will also rise to the occasion. They are going to take 2 steps forward. It's going to happen. I'll give you another example of Tanya and Chetan. Both of them are people who are known as slow learners. This is an intellectual disability where the IQ is below normal. And they have spent 6 years with us. They have learned how to follow all the standard operating procedures. They do all the service as required. They're well trained. They have taught themselves how to engage and talk to our guests. In fact, I have observed guests asking for Tanya and Chetan. It's amazing. And they can also supervise 2, 3, 4 people if the situation calls for it. What did we do a few months ago? We promoted them both. The first time anyone with an intellectual challenge was promoted. We had done so with deaf, we had done so with physical handicap, but not this one. So they rose to the occasion. That's what makes it absolutely incredible. If I think about what I want to do ahead, what lies ahead of us, one is we want to take our 13, 14% inclusion level to 30 within just 2 more years. Last time we moved from 3 to 10, we took about 5 years. This time we have 2 to 3 years. We can do it. We want women to rise to 15% in our organization. Remember, hospitality sector is a little tough on percentages. And we want to make sure that the middle level and the senior level at hotels also have ladies as managers. Then we want to widen the base. So right now we are dealing with about 7 or 8 disabilities. We are trying a new one now. It's called specific learning disability. It includes ADHD, it includes dyslexia, people who learn a little differently. We also want more roles. We want to be able to offer more roles to our employees. And so we're going deeper and wider. We're doing more job mapping. We're trying to find more ways in which we can bring larger numbers into the organization. And all of this takes you back to the drawing board every time. And it's very personal. It's very deep, the kind of work you have to do. That's where we are looking to go in the future. If you look at this, it's a nice circle. It's a circle of inclusion. And what it makes me think of, and what it reminds me of is John Lennon's words. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Can you hear this song in your head? I can. And I remember, my hair is standing on end, in fact. I remember when I hear this song, it makes me feel a certain way. So many people ask us, what does inclusion do for you? Why do you do inclusion? It brings a wave. It brings a wave of happiness. Do you know we call these boys and girls happy people? Because if any other team member or any other guest interacts with them, they leave the interaction feeling joyful and happy. We find creativity goes up. That's another outcome. A person who's autistic or a person who's deaf has other senses which are sharper. And they will be able to see and observe a problem and think of a solution which those of us who don't have a disability may not have considered. It's incredible. Then there is a sense of loyalty. So people who join our organization and who have a disability, they stay for long years and they're loyal. The attrition numbers are lower, something which an organization must consider. The sense of engagement, here's another reason we do it. The sense of engagement of all our employees is very, very high. How do we know this? When the Great Place to Work survey takes place every year, they do a qualitative survey. They ask about, why are you staying in this organization year after year? And the answer our managers give them is, we grow very quickly, and we are so proud and so satisfied to work in an organization that is inclusive. I teach them something, and I learn something from them. What a powerful way to put it. We've also been able to share our best practices with many organizations in India and outside. So another benefit is the sharing. And of course, it leads to success. We do win awards in India and outside. So I'm going to ask you, when will your inclusion journey begin? I'm going to borrow from Nike, who I admire a lot, both their product and their communication strategy. And I'm going to tell all of you, just do it. Thank you.